Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Scott Ritter. And Scott and I are going to talk about a number of things that have been in the news for the past week or two. But we're going to start off with the NATO conference. Um, Scott, there was a heavy emphasis on the Ukraine. What did you take away from what you saw and read about the conference?
There wasn't a heavy emphasis on Ukraine. There was almost exclusive emphasis on Ukraine. NATO and Ukraine are synonymous, and their futures are linked together, which tells you all you need to know. You know, the one of the themes that was woven into this conference was that Ukraine's NATO membership, the process is irreversible. That Ukraine will be a member of NATO. It's irreversible. Simply by saying it makes it so. And yet everybody knows that not only will Ukraine not be a member anytime soon, it will never be a member. One of the things that was contingent upon NATO Ukrainian membership is that it has to win the war against Russia. It's not going to win the war against Russia. And that came out of this conference too. The combined military industrial capacity of the United States and the European Union of NATO cannot supply Ukraine with the weapons it needs to prevail. And that's just a focus on weapons. We haven't even gotten into the manpower issues, which is a critical issue for Ukraine right now. Ukraine is losing this war. It's lost this war. It won't recover. And so by NATO linking its future irreversibly to the future of Ukraine, what we heard at this summit is that NATO will never reach its 80th anniversary. This was the 75th anniversary of NATO. NATO is a doomed institution. It's latched itself to a falling star, and that star is going to hit the ground, and NATO is going to come down with it. And that's the takeaway from this. It was actually an exercise in pathos. The pathetic reality of NATO, of European Union, of Europe, of the United States, when contrasted with the rhetoric that was thrown out there. I mean, no logical, rational person can see a correlation between the two. One is fantasy based, the other one is tragically reality based.
So Zelensky was asking for more money for arms, right?
You don't even have to say that. Just say Zelensky, and we know what he's doing. He's begging for money, he's begging for resources. And at the same time, he's confronting the reality that nothing will help. Ukraine has lost this war. It can't be won. It's irreversible.
So how come the American media is portraying like we're winning, Russia's losing? I mean, it's the same thing like Vietnam. It's gonna leave uh a terrible taste in people's mouth when they realize what the truth is, right?
Well, I disagree. The American media is actually coming around. It has to, because the lies they've been telling have been so outrageous that they can't continue to square these lies with reality. The Wall Street Journal, no friend of Russia, has come out and talked about the truth about how Russia has nullified uh, the American provided technology that's supposed to give Ukraine the fighting edge. These precision guided munitions, which, by the way, I just want to remind your audience, are the heart and soul of America's approach to war. These technologies were conceived during the Cold War, and then developed during 2 decades of the global war on terror, low intensity conflict. They've never been battle tested in a high intensity peer level conflict. They worked very well against Afghan, wedding parties and Iraqi families and sheep herders. We're very good at killing those people. But now we've provided these weapons to the Ukrainians, and the Russians are jamming them. These are precision guided munitions that are dependent upon certain technologies that are vulnerable to electronic interference. And so entire categories of American provided weapons have no combat utility. And yet they constitute what we've been providing Ukraine to turn the corner on this war. So if the weapons we provide Ukraine that are supposed to give it the edge on the battlefield aren't working, what does that tell you? It tells you that Ukraine has lost this war. The Wall Street Journal knows this. The Financial Times in England also knows this. They are talking about the lack of industrial capacity in Europe, that they can't supply Ukraine with the weapons it needs. That's just the reality. Ukraine is burning through resources greater than its NATO allies can resupply. That's a reality. Everybody acknowledges that the Russian defense industry is chugging along. You know, you can have Ben Hodges and Wesley Clark and all these retired generals get up there and they get paid to spout nonsense. Or you can listen to Christopher Cavoli, who is the active duty commander of U.S. forces in Europe, who says straight up, one, that the United States and NATO never could have imagined the level of violence that's taking place between Russia and Ukraine. If you can't imagine, it means you're not prepared for it. He pretty much said that we're not ready for this. And now he's come out and, everybody's saying Russia's weaker, Russia's weaker. He's saying, no, Russia's stronger, much stronger. This war has made Russia much stronger. And then we tie into this the fact that even NATO, when they try to spend money to get stronger, makes themselves weaker. NATO is a corrupted institution. What I mean by that, it's not just politically corrupt. It is, of course. It's not morally corrupt. It is. It's no longer a defensive alliance, but it's physically corrupt. I think most people here, anybody who's bought a home, for instance, I bought a home that was built in, 1985. So when I moved in 2000, the house was already 15 years old and it had some maintenance issues and we had to deal with those maintenance issues. Now I've been in for a quarter of a century almost. And there's maintenance issues. And if you don't deal with those maintenance issues, you can't just paint them over. Anybody got carpenter ants out there? You know what I'm talking about when the carpenter ants get in there and they start eating the wood trim on the house. And instead of ripping it off and putting in new wood trim and treating the carpenter ant problem, that's expensive. You don't want to do it. So you just paint over it. And then it'll step back and you go, looks pretty good, doesn't it? But the reality is you take your finger, you hit the wood, right through it goes. And if you haven't treated it, it's going deeper. And they're in the foundation, they're in the roof, they're in everything. And next thing you know, this house that looks good on the outside is collapsing. And when you say, oh my God, now I have to fix it, you can't afford to fix it. That's NATO. That's NATO today. It's fundamentally broken. Every aspect of it is broken because we haven't fixed any of the maintenance issues. It's just this structure that we've painted over all the problems. And now they're saying we got to actually become a real military alliance. Germany, the strongest economy in Europe for the moment, because it's a shrinking economy, is supposed to be the heart of NATO's remilitarization. Olaf Scholz, in recognition of this, set aside 100 billion euros to jumpstart Germany's modernization programs. That money runs out in 2027. What has been done? Nothing. Zero impact. Why? Because they haven't maintained the house. So this money, which is supposed to put in a new roof and all this, they got to deal with foundational issues. They got to rip out beams, and there's not enough money to do that. So they've gutted the house. They've run out of money. And so now Boris Pistorius, the defense minister, says, I need more money. So he goes to the parliament and says, hey, we got to keep this baby going. I need 6 billion more euros this year just to keep us up to pace. And parliament gave him 1.2 billion. That doesn't meet inflation. So the reality is, at a time when NATO is getting together, talking about how unified and strong and how they're growing, the German military, which is supposed to be the foundational element of this European reconstruction, is shrinking, literally, because they don't have enough money. They needed a certain amount of money just to maintain where they are. They needed more money to recover. They got less money, which means they have to shrink to meet that budget. That's all of Europe. France, England, all of Europe can't meet their budgets. They can't fix this. It's broken. America's broken. We can't fix Europe. We're not going to fund it. We don't have the money. We keep telling Europe, you got to spend more, but Europe can't because thanks to, for instance, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, European energy prices are through the roof. It's going to get even more when the contracts that Russia's honoring right now expire in the near future. And when they do, Europe has no energy. And when you don't have energy, you don't have factories. You don't have factories, you don't have industrial capacity, and then you can't produce weapons. And it's the end of NATO. NATO is a fundamentally corrupted organization. What they did in Washington, D.C. is just apply more paint. But trust me, you take that finger and it goes right through the wall.
So what countries went to the summit?
What?
What countries went to the summit?
Well, you have the core NATO countries, including the two new NATO members. We got, Sweden and Finland, those
Mhm.
powerhouse military superpowers that bring so much to the table, so much. I mean, it's not as if the Finns are screaming, "Hey, if we go to war, who's going to protect us?" Oh, wait, they are. And NATO's saying, "We don't know. We don't have any forces earmarked for this. And the forces that we do have to come through Norway, over the mountains, down through the spine of Sweden, back up before they get to you. And the Russians will interdict every, logistical choke point, and the forces will never get there. And you're on your own, sweet Finland. You're on your own. Congratulations, you joined NATO. You're part of the world's worst military alliance, and you're on your own." That's the reality. And Sweden's sitting there going, "Holy cow, you want us to do what? Bankrupt ourselves to build up a military?" It's a nightmare for these two countries, but they were there because they're proudly proclaiming how wonderful NATO is and all that. Like I said, paint, 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 paint.
Mhm.
It's all this. But then NATO, they invited people from Asia, the Australians, the New Zealanders, the Japanese, the South Koreans were all invited to come in because NATO, a North Atlantic Treaty Organization, says that it has to stick its nose in the Pacific. It's doing so at the invitation of the United States because the United States is a empire in decline. And just like the Romans, when the legions started running out, they turned to the barbarians. They say, "Hey, barbarians, come in. We want to paint you over, make you look like Romans so you can come in and be part of our massive army." But the barbarians, they come in, but they can't solve anything. NATO can't solve the problems in the Pacific. But what's interesting is while NATO is having this meeting, do you know what's happening right now? Chinese paratroopers, Chinese paratroopers are jumping out of airplanes with their Belarus counterparts 3 kilometers from the Polish border. And Europe's like, "Why are Chinese paratroopers there? Why are you sticking your nose in NATO's business?" I mean, this is real. How many NATO paratroopers are jumping 3 kilometers away from the Chinese border? None. China just sent a bunch of guys they're jumping in, not because they're going to invade, they're just sending a signal that we're part of this. You know what else is happening? The North Koreans are sending thousands of engineers to the Donbass, military engineers, thousands of them, not to go to war, not to fight, but to help with reconstruction. Um, Again, NATO, you want to play adult games in the Pacific? Understand that the Pacific is full of adults that are fully capable of playing similar adult games in Europe, and they're playing them right now. This isn't theoretical. This isn't "we will do X, Y, and Z." They're doing it. Chinese paratroopers are jumping out of airplanes 3 kilometers from Poland, and North Korean engineers are on the ground in the Donbass reconstructing destroyed towns to help make the new Russian territories livable again. Oh, gosh, it's horrible, horrible to be Russians and have friends like these. Oh, yeah, these same friends are providing weapons, they're providing support, the kind of stuff that NATO can't do. Remember, NATO claims it's wanting to pivot to the Pacific to confront China and help all these people. They can't even build their own military. It's a joke. NATO is a joke. Paint, paint, paint.
So Biden is very aware of that, right?
I don't think Biden's aware of anything. So
Which brings me to um all the stuff that's going on with Biden. It seems like a lot of money people in Congress want to get rid of Biden. Do you think he's ultimately going to go, or do you think he's going to dig in his heels and stay and possibly lose the election?
I don't care. It doesn't matter. Um, I mean, it is what it is. It's not going to solve anything. The bottom line is we have two people running for president who are not qualified to be president, two people who have the chance of winning who aren't qualified, inherently unqualified.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but people say, it's such a danger. If Trump comes back, it's a danger. Hey, guys, I just want to give you a big narrative busting thing. We had 4 years of Trump. Some people say it was a bad 4 years. Some people say it was the worst president in history. We survived. America survived. We just had 4 years of Biden, where we're coming up on it. Some people say he's the worst president in history. Brain doesn't work, etc. We survived. We're going to survive whoever wins the next election, unless there's a nuclear war. If there's a nuclear war, we all die. And so, I don't care if the name on the ballot's Joe Biden or Donald Trump. What I care about is the policies underneath these two people. I care about whether or not they can be convinced to re-embrace arms control, to de-emphasize nuclear war. That's all I care about. I don't care if it's a brain-addled old Alzheimer's patient or the dumbest man on the planet with an orange face. It doesn't matter who these are, because they're both not qualified to be president, but one of them or somebody related to them is going to be president of the United States. We're going to survive those 4 years, because if it's Trump, he's only in for 4 years. If it's Biden, he's only in for 4 years. We're going to ride it out. It's going to suck to be America for a while. We're going to have internal debates. It's not going to be a civil war. It's just going to be America being America, yelling at each other, screaming at each other, fights about the Supreme Court, fights about Congress, arguments about the economy. We're going to do that for 4 more years unless we have a nuclear war, and then we die. And right now, both of those leaders are heading us down the path where we're going to have a nuclear war. We can survive 4 years of either Trump or Biden. We can't survive 40 minutes of a general nuclear exchange with Russia. So America has to stop worrying about the stupidity of what's going on inside the Democratic Party. It's a game. It's a media show. It's dumber than dirt. We've known this man is brain dead for over a year and a half now. The debate was not his worst moment. It's one of his better moments. We've watched this man deteriorate in front of our eyes, physically and mentally, and we haven't said a damn thing because we realize it doesn't matter, that there's a blob, there's an establishment, there's the deep state, whatever the hell you want to call it, is back there with their hand jumped up his butt into his mouth, moving his lips, but it doesn't work too well anymore. But that's the reality. We've accepted that. And it's the same thing with Trump, except it's the opposite. Trump will be out there with nobody to help him. There's no Team Trump riding to the rescue. There's no establishment saying, hey, boss, we've been waiting for 4 years for you to come back, and all your loyal followers are going to come in and help you govern. He doesn't have that. So we elect Trump. We have one man in the office, abandoned by a country. We elect Biden. We have a man who can't speak, think, who's being ruled by the establishment. One or the other, that's what we get. We'll survive it. It'll be ugly, but we can't survive nuclear war. I'm tired of talking about Biden. I'm tired of talking about Trump. I only want to talk about nuclear war and how we can put pressure on these two teams to come up with a plan to avoid nuclear war. That's all I care about.
Okay. I think your goal is terrific, and I support you. And the thing is, the establishment Democrats are turning their back on Biden, and he doesn't give a damn. He's not budging. So what makes you think that he'll budge if X number of people take to the streets on September 28th and say no more war?
Well,
I don't think he's going to do it.
Well, Cynthia, I don't care what you think. I don't mean to be rude. I don't care what you think. I don't care what anybody else thinks, because it doesn't matter. What I care about is if I can get 1 million people in key critical swing states to commit to a pledge that their vote is linked to the cause of nuclear disarmament. You're either on board or you're not. If you're not, I don't care about you. If you have questions, I don't care. We are out of time. This is a one-issue thing. So on September 28th, I'm not going to be going to the mainstream media. I'm going to be going to alternative media. We have podcasters out there in America today. When you add up the accumulated followership, we have millions of people out there. And if we can get them to agree that they need to save democracy by making their vote count. Your vote doesn't count if you vote R or D just because that's what it does. No. This election will be very close, and it's going to be won by a handful of swing states. Stop looking at the polls where they talk about 47% of Americans this. We know it comes down to the Electoral College. We know it comes down to Electoral College votes, and we know, therefore, it comes down to a handful of jurisdictions in a handful of states where the swing is measured in tens of thousands of votes. And if through this process, I can get in Michigan 50,000 voters, I hope to get more, but 50,000 voters that say, I care about living. My vote goes to the candidate that best articulates a policy to avoid nuclear war. And I can do that in Pennsylvania. New York's now a swing state. Did you hear that? Politico did something. It ain't a given that Biden's going to win this state. It's a swing state now. This is a battleground state. If I can get 200,000 New Yorkers to say, yeah, I want to live, I choose stopping nuclear war. And I can get all these people to commit on September up to and on September 28th. Then I have from September 28th until election day to remind the Republicans and the Democrats that this issue controls their future. That the candidate who says, I need to win these battleground states, I have these votes out there, this block, and all I have to do is articulate a clear policy about stopping nuclear war and promoting disarmament. Now I got their attention. Now I got their attention because they're looking at a very tight race where Biden's sitting there going, oh God, I may have lost the Arab vote because of Palestine, and Trump's sitting there go, I have no idea where I stand with this, that, and the other thing. It's going to be close. It's going to be very close. And their managers are sitting there looking at the numbers. They got the John Kings out there looking at the numbers, and they're going to sit there and go, boss, it's coming down to 10,000 in Michigan. Mm-hmm. Ritter says he's got 50,000 committed. Maybe it's time you give a speech about nuclear disarmament. Maybe it's time you articulate policy. And the second Biden does that, Trump's going to go, oh, I got to do that too. And then he's going to come out and do it. Now we got people talking about disarmament for the first time. That's the goal. That's the objective.
It sounds interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see if what you're doing, you'll be able to pull it off.
Well, the choice is either try or die. So I'm tired. Again, I don't mean to be insulting, Cynthia. If you say it's interesting, I don't need you. Because it's more than interesting, Cynthia. It's life and death.
Right.
It's not interesting. It's not a curiosity. Do you want to live or do you want to die? It's a simple question. So if you want to live, stop making it interesting and say, I support that. Because when you say it's interesting, it's sort of, it hints at that, Scott, I don't think it's going to work. Scott, I don't think. And you know what? Then I don't need you. I'm not picking on you. I'm saying this generally to everybody out there. Do you want to live or do you want to die? We are closer to nuclear war today than any time in the history of the nuclear era. Both sides are lowering the thresholds for the use of nuclear weapons. The United States is getting ready to reintroduce intermediate range nuclear tipped missiles into Europe. Missiles I got rid of back in the 1980s and the early 1990s. Okay, we're all going to die if this happens. You know, people laughed when I said, hey, when you meet me, shake my hand and buy me a beer, because when I was an INF inspector, I got rid of the weapons that if we didn't get rid of, you all would have died. Ha ha. They go, that's cute, Scott. I'll shake your hand and buy you a beer. I was dead damn serious. Those weapons were going to lead to our imminent death and destruction. We got rid of them. They're coming back. Do you think suddenly now that they're back, when we don't have any diplomacy, no arms, no talking, that they're not going to achieve the same goddamn result that we had back then? I'm sick and tired of people saying, no, either with me or you're against me. And that didn't work when it was about terrorism, but it better work when it's about preventing nuclear war. Because if you're against me, there's going to be a nuclear war and you're going to die. And so all the people out there saying Joe Biden's brain, Donald Trump's face color, shut up. It's no longer about that, guys. One of those parties is going to be president. It's time for America to get real. You need to make your vote count. You need to make your vote stand for something. Make your vote stand for saving your own damn life. Saving the lives of your friends, saving the lives of your family, saving your community, saving America, save democracy, save the world. Make your vote count in November. Otherwise, I don't have time.
Do you think that the Biden camp and the Trump camp see you coming?
I don't care. We're going to be there on September. I hope on September. I don't care what they see up until September 28th. I don't, because it doesn't matter. Up until September 28th, I'm just a bunch of hot air. I'm just a guy on a podcast, getting wound up. What matters is on September 29th, when I tally up the numbers and I go, holy cow, we did it. I got 2 million people spread out over critical battleground states committing to this issue. And now I get to run advertisements in the New York Times. Now I get to run billboards in states. I get to put advertising out there because we're going to be raising money to do that too. I told you this isn't just about September 28th.
Okay.
That's important. What's important was what happened from September 29th till November 5th. And if we have these people committing to this issue, we now are politically relevant. That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. So, you know, whatever whatever you have to say, you always have me as a platform.
I appreciate that.
So how's your new book coming along?
#1 on Amazon in the Russian Soviet Union category. So that's a big category. Maybe someday we'll make it #1 on Amazon altogether. It's doing well. Appreciate the question. And I think it's a book that people are discovering is a small but comprehensive resource for understanding the Ukraine conflict.
Do you have it near you that you could hold it up and show the audience?
Of course I do.
Okay.
So covering Ukraine, the Scott Ritter interviews through the eyes of Anya Kay. Anya Kay is a Polish-American podcaster. Never did geopolitics in her life, more of a spiritual person. But when the war started, her spirituality was insulted by this conflict, and she started reaching out to people to try and better understand it. I view Anya Kay as every man and every woman, meaning that she is literally the people of your audience, the people in America who have questions. And she asked these questions, and she asked them from a place of seeking deep understanding. Her questions are fantastic. Her interviews were fantastic. And we were able to pull questions from interviews that were initiated right when the war started up until May of this year, and use them to define the conflict. It's called Covering Ukraine. So we're covering Ukraine war from the beginning to where it is now. The book's out. It's very relevant. And, we just had a NATO summit where all they did is talk about Ukraine. I'm sure a lot of people out there have questions. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The answers to your questions are in this book.
So Scott, in the final moments, do you have anything to add?
I think I said it all. I'm singularly focused on trying to save democracy, save America, save the world by making people's votes count in November. It's called Operation Dawn. And it's coming to a podcast near you. There's no excuse on Saturday 28th for you not to tune in to whatever we put together. I'm meeting with the organizer today. We're going to lock in some strategies and some plans, and then we're moving forward. Come hell or high water. Do we fail? Maybe we do, but nobody will ever accuse me of, I didn't stop the war in Iraq. Tried my damnedest. I went to Iraq. I spoke to the Iraqi parliament. I made myself the most inconvenient person on American media. I made myself hated in the halls of Congress because I exhausted myself trying to stop that war. Didn't. The war happened. But no one can say I didn't try. No one can say I didn't try. Can I stop a nuclear war from coming? Maybe not. Hope I can. But you know what? On the day those nuclear bombs hit, they won't be able to say, well, Scott Ritter didn't try to stop this. I'm going to try. I'm going to try my damnedest.
I don't think they'll have time to say that, though.
Thoughts come in quicker than the mouth can vocalize.
Right.
You may think
Right.
it, but
So Scott, I'm sure that we'll talk again soon. So you have a great day. Thank you for being on Issues That Matter. Thank you everybody for listening. So if you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Scott, best of luck today.
thank you very much, Cynthia. You too.